Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Stash Report from the Stash Project. This could be a little bit different today. This is going to be our State of the Hobby address. Yes, that's right. We're going to take a look at last year and what we have looking forward into our crystal ball for 2021 and just sort of take stock of where we are. I keep meaning to make one of these videos every year, and I never get around to it. This year I finally put up a poll for the folks on our Facebook page to sort of take a vote at what was the most significant new toolkit in 2020. Have those results as well as just some general sort of thoughts on things. So, 2020, what a year, huh? Yeah, certainly had its moments, right? March was sort of the turning point for everyone as we experienced our own apparently never-ending saga with the coronavirus. We did get to two model shows this year. Personally, we did. Well, I say we did because myself and my friends that I normally go to model shows with were at both shows actually, for the most part, and they were the Buckeye Scale Classic in March, which due to a scheduling conflict got bumped up 2 weeks earlier than it normally runs. And that was very fortunate for them because that ended up being the last model car show pretty much for the year. I know there were a few scattered ones here and there in states where they didn't care if you die or not. And, there was that. And then we actually had one here in eastern Pennsylvania at the end of October when the numbers actually didn't look too terribly bad before this holiday surge of people who can't stop licking each other's buttholes started. And now we're back into a situation where we're, almost a year down the road and things look as bad now as it did at the beginning. So it's a very frustrating experience for a lot of the first responders and frontline workers out there. But we did, like I said, get to two shows. We did get this year, myself, did get into the Scale Auto Contest Annual. That was always sort of a personal, little off in the distance bucket list item. Always wanted to be in the magazine and some contest coverage. I'm never going to be the guy who has the thing on the cover or does a how-to of some in-depth conversion or something like that. But just always wanted to have something I built at a model contest end up in the magazine. So that was cool that happened. And yeah, it's been an interesting year. The lockdown itself and its related, sort of, how should I put this, inability to do much of anything. There wasn't a whole heck of a lot of places to go or things to do because the places you could go tended to get flocked to by everybody, and then suddenly they became places you couldn't go. Uh, made for a very interesting environment for the retail end of the hobby this year. Most vendors and brick and mortar stores and things like that saw sales that were comparable to 2019. Some saw great sales greatly improved over 2019, even with some of them having situations where they had maybe a week or two in March where they weren't open before they sort of figured out the whole concept behind how you could just run a hobby shop with curbside pickup. Most of the hobby shops around here figured that out fairly quickly, and so they were only shut down for a week or two. My main hobby shop that I deal with is a major show vendor in the mid-Atlantic area. John tends to run maybe a little bit of lower New York, a little bit of eastern Ohio, Pennsylvania, some of Maryland, some of Northern Virginia, and obviously the only real show he got a chance to go to this year was the Buckeye Scale Classic. In March, there were a few other things here and there, but he lost basically half of his revenue for the year with the shows being gone. But the online sales through eBay, as well as just the traffic sales through the building, were more than enough to actually make up for all of the lost revenue from the shows, which was kind of an interesting theory in its own right, because one of the reasons that John had actually opened a brick and mortar store here around the Pittsburgh area was because he didn't want to be traveling to all those shows anymore. And this, now, whether or not you can really extrapolate anything out of what was this year, but it did prove that you can just run that store and not have to go to all the shows, and you're not really going to lose any money doing it. So we'll see how many shows he goes to in the future, because it's a big process to pack up a huge travel trailer and drag it someplace and unpack it and do the sales and then repack it and then drag it home. And some weekends he was doing two shows in two different states and stuff like that. So be interesting to see if he slows down a little bit. He's Not elderly by any means, but certainly not a spring chicken either, as most people who run hobby shops. Let's face it. So places like Airfix, who for years and years and years have never turned profits, they turned a six-figure profit this year. So even on the actual manufacturer's end, it's been a good year for the hobby. And just in general, hobby wide for every sort of genre, not just for cars itself. So it also proves a theory that I put out there a number of times, that it is the fact that when there is uh, a difficulty with the economy, and for some people there's a huge difficulty for the economy. They lost their jobs. They're in dire straits with their housing and things like that. And for a lot of people, their economy is bustling right along, whether they like it or not, because they have to be at work. Um, it is an overall, economic, uh, you know, difficulty in a big picture sense. And in those times is usually when the hobby does really well. After the 2008 financial collapse, after the 1990s dot-com bubble burst and things like that. So it's been pretty much what I've extrapolated over the years, is the people lose the ability to do big things, whether it's financially or in this case, you just can't go do the big things. They tend to focus back on things that they can do and things that are not, great expenses. I mean, you could invest a lot of money in modeling, obviously, but whether you like the price of them or not, hobby model kits are relatively inexpensive and provide you with hours of, you know, certain kits aren't going to give you enjoyment necessarily, but they're going to give you hours of thing for the money you're putting into them, and people tend to flock back to that these hobbies when you can't do other things, whether it is because of financial or it is just because, well, we can't go on vacation this year because we can't have nowhere to go, so we're going to put that money into doing other things instead. And so the hobby has benefited greatly, really, from that situation. It's not the situation I think a lot of us would like, or the reasons we would like, but necessarily not. Irregardless, 2020 and the global pandemic is not by any means the death of the hobby by any stretch of the imagination. So there's that. Let's go take a look. Well, you're not going to see it, but I'm going to read it to you. But I'm going to look at it so I can see what the heck I'm talking about here. The new toolkits for 2020. Now, these again are automotive only. I put it up for a survey. Make sure I mute my messenger here because I'm talking to a few people in the background before I started filming this. So these first several are going to be in no particular order because they did not receive any votes. They're just in the order that Facebook put them into when I put them into the poll. So you have the Hasegawa Mitsubishi Lancer EX 1800 Turbo and the 2000 Turbo Rally. Those two separate kits there, technically speaking, but they are the same base tool. The 1800EX being the civilian street kit, and then the 2000 Turbo being the third place finishing Thousand Lakes Rally kit that we talk about a lot. Now, obviously, the new kit was not new tooling because it is based on the BMAX kit from earlier, and going into 2021, there will be a street version of the 2000 Turbo because they needed to make the 300 or 500 of them for the homologation. KA models, Mazda K360. That was a unique little model out of South Korea of a three-wheeled scooter. Or where it is, a three-wheeled like light delivery truck. It's sort of a pickup bed. Earlier versions of the Mazda K360 actually have a motorcycle front end mounted to a pickup truck bed, and this is the first sort of the car version of it, where it's an enclosed cab. The biggest problem the Mazda K360 has going forward is that a number of them were accidentally shipped out with a parts runner for a later version of the Mazda K series, which is going to be, if they ever release it, a bigger version, more CC, bigger delivery vehicle, and it's also longer in the from cab to bed length, and that has caused the people. I have one of these. You can't really build it because you have the wrong frame, you have the wrong chassis components, you have the wrong exhaust components, and all these other things. Now you can obviously chop those things down, and John over at Feedin's Garage did end up doing that with his. But KA has had absolutely no customer service for this. They've used coronavirus as an excuse not to fix the problem because it was we can't ship it to you. Now you could ship it to us, but you're still not doing it. I think the easiest fix would be if they ever do get around to doing the second version of it, they need to include the a short frame in there, just a spare sprue for everybody, because there's, again, it was said to be 10%, but it seems to be more than that. It seems to be pretty much the entire first run until somebody caught the problem, but nobody ever stopped the problem from being put in a box and shipped out, have this issue. Next up, you have the Nunu Hobby Peugeot 306 Maxi, so a new tool rally kit. It's a kit that could not, you had to have a resin version. There's a couple of resin versions floating around, so something that never existed in plastic before. Also, the new Hobby BMW 320i. It's a semi-significant mid-2000s touring car. Did have a great deal of success, especially between 2001 2004. You have to kind of be into that era of touring cars to care one way or the other. The Academy 1975 Hyundai Pony. Not an unexpected kit, because we did see that at the Nuremberg Toy Festival in February as something that was coming. But what it ended up being, in the sense of being a really robustly complete model kit with several, well, not several hundred, but over 100 pieces, was certainly a surprise, because one of the other kits we'll talk about here in a second was basically an unassembled promotional model. If you have any of the older Academy Hyundais from the 1980s, they're very, very simplified, basic kits. This was an actual attempt at making a real, honest-to-God, comparable to anything else that is in the market kind of curbside model kits. So, obviously, it's one of those things that also is a very narrow profile as far as who's going to be interested in that. It is very significant to the South Korean market in the sense that it is the first car that was natively designed and built. They did steal a few people from various other manufacturers as Hyundai became its own native car facility. Prior to that, they were selling rebadged European Fords. But for the South Koreans, this is a big deal to have that be a car, which is why the kit exists. Let's got Hasegawa's 1987 Toyota Corolla 11 AE92 street car and JTCC race car. Again, two separate kits, but based on the same mother tooling. We see we're going to be getting the later AE92 GTZ street car and later JTCC race car coming up here in the next couple of months. So that continues to produce new tooling, or new kits, I should say, out of that new tooling. Significant in the sense of the fact that a street car of this version of the Corolla Levin did not exist. Race cars did. BMAX made the Minolta liveried AE92 race car probably 6 years ago. Well, it's probably 5 years. Maybe 6 years. Technically speaking, I think it might be 6 years, with it being 2021. It's not actually 6 full calendar years yet. But yeah, it's another thing in their historic car series, even though some of us might argue the 1987 is not that historical. And then you had the Bell Kits MG Metro 6R4 rally car, another one of these sort of significant rally cars in the sense that you could not get this in a plastic model ever before. You had to buy a resin kit or something along those lines, kit bash something together, mostly resin. And it is not a significant player in Group B, but it was one of the Group B players, and I think that's one of the bigger pushes in rally kit manufacturing that we've seen over the last couple of years between BMAX, Nunu, and Bell Kits, was sort of producing all of the Group B kits. You have an Opel Ascana coming, you have a Ford RS200 coming, you've got the Porsche 911 SCRS coming, so there's a lot of Group B kits still in the pipeline. And then, let's see here, we have the Academy 2017 Hyundai Santa Fe, which is a fun little kit just because it's a real honest-to-God car you see every day kind of thing. But it is sort of an unassembled promotional model. It's a very low parts count, somewhere in the 50s. It has a couple of sort of fit and finish issues in the sense of there's no real inner fender wells for the rear wheels or things like that. You sort of just can look up through the floor up to the ceiling. But it's a shelf model. It's a promo model. It's not like a whole big deal. And it's a fun kit to have because of hey, you see lots of Hyundai Santa Fe's around, and there's not really too many modern cars you can build models of that you see around a lot. There's lots of modern car models, but how many Lamborghini Aventadors do you see driving around on a day-to-day basis? You'll see a Santa Fe today, no matter where you're at. And then the last non-voted on kit here is the new tool Hasegawa Toyota Supra, the A70. This, of course, is going to have a number of versions. It'll be part of what I would consider to be the Hasegawa 2021 set of releases. You're going to see a lot of Supras this year. We've got the race car coming next month, and then there's going to be another version of the street car, because there's another streetcar steering wheel in it, among other things. Obviously, it wasn't going to just be one version of it. And then there'll probably be at least one more, possibly more race car versions of it coming. There aren't that many Japanese racing versions of the Supra. It was only raced for 3 years in Japanese touring. 1 year is the year that that Tamiya's kit represents, which is an '87, which is a slightly different front end to it, which is something they can do with this kit because it is tooled in a way you could swap out the older front end and rear fascia. But 89 is the kit that we're getting in February, and then 90 is or let's see, 88 is the kit we're getting in the kit coming next month, and then 89 is the Bijou sponsored one with the powder blue one, and then that's it. After 1990, the R32 GTR took effect, if you will, within Japanese touring, and the Toyota Supra was just not competitive with it. So it would not be until it came back underneath the 4th gen in Super GT that this Toyota Supra would be a very successful race car again. So with one vote, you have the Hasegawa Nissan Skyline R32 GTR kit. So this is, again, another new tool. It came right at the end of the year. We have we're going to talk about it in this week's stash report, just got the first race car version of this out this week as well. This kit will have a number of versions as time goes along in 2021. There are 4 sets of mirror faces in the kit itself. Obviously, you're not using all 4 sets of mirrors at once. One set of mirrors is for the street car, one set of mirrors is for this race car, and then there's 2 more sets of mirrors. So many versions of the R32 to be coming, possibly even non-GTR versions, as there were versions of the R32 Skyline that exist that were 4-wheel drive and had the Super Hikus all steering system, so you would not have to necessarily swap out all of the suspension components, plus the way the kit is tooled with it being a curbside, but the engine core, the bottom of the engine with the transaxle that powers the front wheels, being a separate piece, it is very easy to turn this into a rear-wheel drive vehicle, which would open it up to a few other R32 Skylines as well that are, again, non-GTR. The other kit with one singular vote is the new hobby Audi R8 LMS GT3. So a fun GT3 kit that was newly released this year. Many liveries for the Audi have come along since then, so there's certainly a lot of build options with that kit. With 6 votes, you had the Revell Jaguar E-Type Coupe. We found out, of course, that there is a cabriolet or a convertible version of this coming supposedly in April from the same tooling. And the kit itself seems to be pretty decent. Some people have gotten some versions of this kit that are very messy looking, and some people have not. And so it definitely seems like a situation where certain kits... It's hard to tell because some of these people are building model kits for review. And that usually means you've gotten a pre-production version of the model kit, and it may not necessarily have everything fixed with it, which is a really lousy thing to do because then people get problems with the review model for the magazine that the kit itself really doesn't have in retrospective of the fact that once everything was finalized. But I saw one just today where there's weird tooling marks in the roof. It has sig marks all over the body, and it's a very weirdly sloppy molding, but I've seen several other people building them that do not have those problems. The most universal problem the E-Type Coupe has is the fact that Revell of Germany seems to have gone with a universal windshield, and that means that the windshield itself, as well as the windshield frame, are the wrong height for the coupe. The coupe's roof is taller than the convertible's was, and they seem to have included a windshield frame and a windshield, it's glass itself, that are for the convertible, and they just used them on both, which gives you a windshield that's 2 inches too low, and that was, of course, a huge problem with the Mustang. The roof was 2 inches too low in scale. And I'm years later after the Mustang came out, because that was 2013, and I understand a great deal more about manufacturing and business decisions. And I understand that this is a situation where if you had to tool another windshield frame, and various other parts separately, it might have just been a little bit too much to make this project a thing, especially with it only being a year and change down the road since the whole buyout and bankruptcy of Habaco and everything. And this was obviously something that was probably already in plans prior to that bankruptcy happening. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but and as another friend of mine was saying in the comments for that post, it's always something with Ravel, and yeah, it's always something with Ravel. With 14 votes coming in second place, a tighter race than I would have expected necessarily is the Mobius 6566 Ford F Series. Now I realize that this was a little bit of a cheat because it's not technically a new tool. They're using the suspension, the drivetrain, the engine, and things like that out of the earlier 68 to 72 Fords. But the entire body is new, the entire interior is new. There's some other bits and pieces of engine specifics and mirror specifics that are new to this kit. With it also being a significant thing that it introduces the flare side bed, it introduces the 8-foot long work truck bed. I felt that it was enough to garner it being in this poll. So again, 14 votes for that. And then first place finishing the poll here, we had a total of, let's see, that's 20, that's 31, 38. A total of 40 votes, looks like, out of a group of 600 people in it. The first place was the Tamiya Ford Mustang GT4. And that is certainly a car that we've seen a lot of people build, both in the sense of being a an attempt at a street car. I've seen several of those turned into quasi 350 Cobras, or Shelbys rather. And, it's something that I'm surprised no one has made a trans kit for to officially turn that race car into a street car. Maybe they feel that somewhere in some dark corner of Tamiya they plan to actually release that as a streetcar kit. No word that that's coming, but then Tamiya usually never releases something only one way. Even things like the AMG GT3 kit had the Super GT version of it. Every Tamiya kit comes out in 2 releases. Sometimes it's a silly release like a clear body. Sometimes it's a silly release like, hey, we threw an Aber photo etch set into this. Sometimes it's a silly release where it's, oh, we've made the body molded in a color. And sometimes it's a completely different kit. Ferrari 360 Modena, Ferrari 360 Spider, LaFerrari FXX-K, Enzo FXX. So we'll see where the Mustang comes out on as far as its secondary release. Looking into 2021, we know, for example, that we just talked about it in the last weekly video. The Heller, Renault Forgana, that van, that's coming finally. We know that Revell of Germany is going to give you granted it's last year's kit, but it hasn't come out, so it's 2021 kit at this point. The Volkswagen T2, the Snap-type van, as well as the Porsche 911 Coupe and Targa, and the Fendt Diesel Ross F20 tractor. Hasegawa has been, for the last 5 years, doing 2 new automotive tool kits a year. We don't have any real indication of what those might be at this point, but Shizuka, Virtual Shizuka, I'm imagining, is coming up not too terribly long, and then the other one will be a fall kit, so we'll see what those are. Otherwise, I would expect 2021 to be the year of the Supra GTR, as there will be multiple versions of the Supra, and a lot of multiple versions of the GTR. There's a lot of race car ground to cover for the GTR. It was a very, very popular car. It won the championship in Japanese touring car for 5 years in a row. So there's plenty of kits to choose from, even if you just made the championship cars and call it at that. But they're not even doing that because the first car is the 1993 season car, which is not the winning car for 1993, but just a car that won a singular race. So we'll see how many of those actually end up coming out. We'll see if Studio 27, who had done a number of decal sets for the old Tamiya GTR race car, reprint those, resize to the Hasegawa kit if it needs to be resized. Technically, they should be the same size, but you know how that works. And yeah, we'll see where that goes with that, and we'll see what streetcar versions come out of that. Again, limited number of Toyota Supra race cars, basically. One more without a retool into 1987. Then it'll be 2 more. Be interested to see if there's a left-hand drive version of the race car as well, because that would give you the ability to do the 24 Hours of Spa cars, which are some of the more popularly requested cars. But again, they're all left-hand drive. And I mean, could you build a right-hand drive car with a Spa livery on it? Yes, you could. Would I build a Spa car with a right-hand drive dashboard in it? No, I would not. That's not an accurate race car at that point. Uh, Revell USA. We know that there is a 71 and 73 Mustang series coming. We saw the laser scans of that being done. So when that comes out in 2021, if that comes out in 2021, could be a 2022 kit. You never know. That's something to look forward to as well. Tamiya, of course, will be dropping their McLaren Senna literally any day now. Should come out in the middle of this week. Let's see. Trying to think of what else is out there manufacturer wise. We did just get the 63 Nova from round 2. That's a new tool kit, whether it's seems to be or not. There is another new tool, fully ground up new tool of an old kit coming from round 2 as well. Check out our weekly stash project or stash report video for all the details on that, because that'll be in that. So those are 2 new tool kits that coming out of round 2. Salvino's has a 73 Charger coming up, which is an 85% new tool. They'll still ride their universal chassis that they put underneath all their new tool kits, but it'll have new body, probably some new interior parts, the Mopar drivetrain, and all that. So technically speaking, it's a new kit. We don't really have anything news out of Mobius. The only thing we know that would be out there that still exists will be the 48-foot flatbed trailer. That's not a new tool kit because it uses a great deal of parts out of the van trailers. So, yeah, I mean, it uses all of the suspension components out of the van trailer with a flatbed deck. As one giant piece of plastic really a new tool? So, yeah, I know there's 2 flatbed decks. One's flat, one's cantilevered because it's empty, but is it still not necessarily a new toolkit? Let's see. Trying to think anything else. Fujimi, who knows? Aoshima, both those companies have given up on doing 124 scale new tool kits. Fujimi arguably could be considered to have given up on making cars at all at this point. Yeah, that's pretty much what we know about. Oh well, Nunu, the other one, obviously, you're going to get the BMW MA GTE kit eventually, finally. The 911 SCRS rally car, and then we should get the Audi A4 touring car this year, which was a pretty significant touring car in the late 1990s. Won BTCC, British Touring, and won Macau several times, so that'll be coming for sure. There are other things out there, but can't really say for sure on any of those right now. And then Belkits. Belkits should give us something new in 2021. You have the modern Citroen, the Opel Ascana, the Ford RS, the modern Hyundai i20, and then in the middle of last year they just were, oh hey, by the way, remember we're going to do the Renault R5, the Renault Megane, and the Renault something else. I can't remember what the heck the car is right now, but they have 7 subjects. Now the Renaults may share pieces and parts when it's all said and done with. I'm not sure how much of the chassis and drivetrain can go between those cars necessarily. But yeah, the Opel Ascana is a new tool. The Ford RS is a new tool. The Hyundai is a new tool. The Citroen is a new tool. And all 4 of those were announced well before now, and the Renaults that were announced, that were announced this year. So they have a bunch of things that they could put out this year. We'll see how many or what we actually see for 2021. So that pretty much covers it. I would say there were 14 new toolkits last year as far as the automotive stuff goes. Probably really 18 when you consider, oh, this is a street car, oh, this is a race car, but I don't really count them separately because of the same, basically, like I said, the same tool, 2 different versions. When one version uses half of the other version, it's not really a new toolkit to me. But there were 14, like I said, new toolkits. Looking at 2021, there are at least 15 new toolkits, not counting all the supers, all the GTRs, reissues of Revell stuff, reissues of Round 2 stuff. So, hobby not dead, unfortunately, for all the people peddling that theory, not dead. Now, a quick sort of look at why that theory still gets peddled heavily. As this year ended, or last year, and then we come into this year. Well, you had, of course, the ending of Scale Auto Enthusiast. I know that really, really angered a lot of people irrationally. When the simple fact of the matter is the magazine wasn't turning a profit, wasn't turning its own production costs, and merging the other magazine, Fine Scale Modeler, which is also sort of suffering the same sort of fate, although not quite as badly. You couldn't put the military stuff into Scale Auto. That wasn't just that merger wasn't going to work. What was it going to be then? Scale Auto and planes and tanks and boats? Like putting the cars in a Fine Scale Modeler from a logistical standpoint makes more sense because you can be a Fine Scale Modeler of all subjects, not just cars or not just planes, not just tanks. Um, the first couple of issues of Fine Scale Modeler have not had a great deal of car content in it. That seems to be a fact of just it was a not necessarily unexpected. I'm sure the people at Kalmbach could read the writing on the wall, but still, if you're producing two magazines, you can't just start diverting articles into the other magazine while the first magazine is still in production. So will 2021 offer more car stuff in FSM? Possibly. I mean, we knew people that were building review subjects of car stuff for FSM's reviews. Now, how well that goes into the magazine, how much of that just becomes online content, because there's been a whole bunch of car stuff on like Fine Scale Modeler's Facebook page. But I understand, even if I don't agree with it, people's reluctance to uh, participate in that merger. I do find it, however, very ironic, as we mentioned before, that people will say you can't judge this kit; it's just a pre-production shot. Are the same people that are refusing to even get one single issue of the new magazine because they clearly know what it's going to look like. Then you had Wings close. For people who car guys don't know what that is, that was a model company out of New Zealand, run by Sir Peter Jackson of the Lord of the Rings fame. Uh, it was a toy for him, really. They had a real, honest to God, plane restoration company, and they had this very niche, high-end World War One, for the most part, airplane kit manufacturing. The thing is, the enterprise of Peter Jackson seems to have perhaps taken a few money dollars from the New Zealand government that it shouldn't have in tax benefits, and that brought the entire thing crashing down on its head. A lot of people will blame COVID. Unfortunately, that explanation really doesn't do anything for the fact that the tax evasion stuff popped up months beforehand. COVID certainly didn't help anything. It hasn't helped many people's anythings, but it wasn't the cause of this. It was a little bit of financial uh, shenanigans, shall we say, that caused that problem. And then at the very beginning of this year, we've seen the closing of Squadron. Uh, a lot of people have said things along the lines of, like, well, if the hobby was doing so well in 2020, why did Squadron close? Squadron closed because they were Squadron. A lot of people have memories of Squadron back when they were not just a mail order company out of Texas, but when they were, out in California, when they had stores on the East Coast, and they were a much bigger thing. Before the founding members of the ownership group sold out to, oh hey, we're going to make something out of this business kind of people, and who promptly torpedoed Squadron straight into the ground. I personally have only ever purchased one model kit from Squadron. They were selling some ICM stuff on like 3 times lower than wholesale value was. So I picked up one because why not? But Squadron's biggest problem was they were the most expensive place to buy things. Their prices were manufacturer suggested retail prices. They very rarely ran sales on things, and when they did run sales on things, the amount of money that you saved on them would bring them pretty much just still above, but barely in line with what you could buy it for anywhere else. And well, if I buy this, it's still a buck or two too expensive, technically speaking. At the same place I could buy this, why am I buying it from you? I already bought it from other people. Like their whole, it's sort of how I don't understand how Hobbytown USA still exists. Hobbytown USA does the same thing. Everything is manufacturer's suggested retail price. It's way more expensive than it is anywhere else, and I don't understand how that. I mean, that's a chain of franchises. I don't understand how that works because eventually you would think that yet you're not selling enough of anything. I mean, maybe they do enough RC sales and service to sort of make up for everything else, but yeah, that's a weird one in of itself. And so yes, Squadron was a very big thing, was a major mail order retailer, but is not that big of a deal anymore. I know a lot of people are Well, like Scale Auto, they're looking at Squadrons closing sort of the way they did at Scale Auto, where, oh man, this was a great magazine. Yeah, it was 15, 20 years ago, but it hadn't been a very good one more recently. It maybe had a chance of being turned around at the end there before it closed, but there's so much bad there, and no, it's the same sort of thing. Nobody subscribed to Scale Auto because they didn't like the way the magazine had been going, and now the magazine couldn't be self-sustainable, and then everyone got mad because nobody bought the thing that they wanted to have that nobody bought. And Squadron's the same sort of way. Everyone's kind of upset that this mail order company they didn't order from, but they used to in the past, but realized that they didn't do it anymore because it was too expensive, closed. It's a loss of a childhood thing more than it is an actual, oh gee, I'm so upset about this business decision that was made for this company that I no longer really actually technically support. Um, that pretty much wraps this up, I guess. We'll see what 2021 holds. It certainly seems like it should be better, right? Maybe, yeah. Put your mask on, stay away from other people, get out of this, get your vaccine, all the rest of that happiness. Maybe 2021 can have some shows later this year because the spring shows are already getting canceled. Let's try to get control of ourselves. Maybe we can have some fall stuff. Maybe, please, yes, no. See you guys on the other side.